Chapter 61. Innocent and Pure? Kind of interesting. Ha! A new day. A beautiful day. Lin Yi woke early again the next morning. Humph, his body just wouldn't let him sleep in. He didn't know whether that was good or bad, but either way, he'd had a great night in his dreams. In that favorite dream, he'd won the Street Fighter tournament in that other world, with Jamie's super exploding return and a 1v3 finish. He'd been crying with joy in the dream. And yet, why do I still feel tired? He muttered. I went to bed early. Why don't I feel refreshed? He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, confused, and then felt something unusual around his legs. The sudden awareness made his eyes narrow. He slowly pulled the blanket away, and then, there she was, Raven, and under the covers something was going on. Lin Yi slammed the blanket back down, disbelief written all over his face. He opened it again. The scene hadn't changed. This has to be a dream, right? He thought, and closed his eyes to try to wake up from this dream within a dream. But a sliding, intimate sensation told him otherwise. Ugh, this wasn't a dream. It was real. He bolted upright and yanked the blanket away. Raven, what exactly are you doing? Oh, Jack, good morning. Even after being caught, Raven wore an unabashed, satisfied smile. Lin Yi rubbed his face and sighed. How long have you two been like this? Not long. Most of the night, I guess. You're not tired? Me? I don't sleep much. I meditate a lot at night. Of course she didn't. Demons were outrageously resilient. 2 days with little sleep, and she was still energetic. Lin Yi felt like he hadn't slept at all. If only Weiss and Gwen had your stamina, you'll wake up to something even more interesting, he muttered. Raven's smile only grew wider. So since you're awake, she dropped the pretense, slipped out from under the blanket, and what followed is best left to imagination. Some plot details are entirely omitted in adherence to positive energy, mainstream directions. If you want the rest, please pay to unlock. Wink. By the time Weiss and Gwen stirred, it was already noon. Wow, yesterday was crazy, wasn't it? Weiss stretched as she sat up. Good morning, Weiss. Lin Yi yawned and tried to act nonchalant. Gwen, good morning. Gwen blinked, rubbing at her eyes. Weird. Where are Jack and Raven? She asked. They're probably in the bathroom. Sounds like water, Raven pointed out. Gwen's enhanced senses, Spider-Man-like, made her more aware of subtle things, and of course that heightened sensitivity applied to other experiences too. Lin Yi tried not to think about it. Weiss's expression cleared. Wait, they went into the bathroom together? What? Sneaky. Gwen leapt up. The two of them barreled for the bathroom door. Oh, hey, you two are awake, Raven said lazily from the doorway. Silence. Then, want to shower together. Weiss and Gwen exchanged looks. Again, some scenes are omitted to stay within the mainstream, so for now, let's just admire the scenery. Lin Yi couldn't believe how the morning had slipped away. It was almost afternoon, another day wasted being gloriously irresponsible, reveling in whatever chaotic energy they'd tapped into. Young people, he thought. Even Weiss had boundless energy. He was grateful the black sword had beefed him up. Otherwise, he might have collapsed from exhaustion. Sigh. Now it was past 3, the weekend nearly over, and everyone had to hurry back home on the private plane. This was crazy, Weiss said, taking a sip of premium coffee. But it was fun. Can we do this every weekend? Gwen mumbled around a mouthful of food. Superheroes burned through energy fast, and Gwen was especially voracious. Raven had endurance, Gwen had ferocity, and Weiss, relative to them, was the most normal. Of course, normal for Weiss still meant sword genius levels of skill. If Lin Yi wasn't strong himself, he'd be in real trouble against the three of them combined. Of course, if nothing unexpected comes up, we'll spend every weekend exploring the weird and wonderful places in this world, Weiss said. Really? Yay! Gwen cheered, throwing up her hands. Lin Yi silently celebrated. Those hard dungeon runs had paid off. They'd leveled them up well. Weiss grew thoughtful. So are you going to tell your family about the ruins? About what happened there? Huh? No. My family wouldn't stay calm if they knew about our relationship, Weiss replied, shaking her head. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ruins. Oh, the ruins. Phew, don't scare me like that, Lin Yi said, relieved. The look on Weiss's face made him wonder how naive she really thought he was. Interesting. 62. Superman. What on earth are you protecting? Of course I have to tell them what happened in the ruins. It's a major discovery, Weiss said, happily spreading her hands. Ah, Won't they try to stop you? The ruins are dangerous, Lin Yi said. He could already picture the Schnee family fussing over Weiss. She'd come into power and talent. Letting her run off into danger would be unthinkable for them. The more someone had, the more carefully they guarded it. Lin Yi understood that well. He'd developed soft spots for these girls, and he didn't mind. Not caring about anything meant he had nothing to protect. That might make a person invincible, but it also made them lonely and unapproachable. He liked having things worth defending. You don't have to worry, Weiss said with that infuriating, absolute confidence. I can convince them to let us keep going. That would be a relief, Lin Yi nodded. He let the topic drop. Man, I don't want this weekend to end. Gwen sighed into her food. The carnival and warmth were over. What waited was family, school, and the responsibilities of a hero. Sometimes she just wanted to drop everything and keep celebrating forever. She shifted closer and rested against Lin Yi's shoulder. Who isn't? But don't worry, we only have to wait 5 more days. Then we get a whole new weekend. Oh, right, there's a holiday next week, Weiss chimed. A 3-day holiday, Raven added. Hey, you're right, Weiss clapped. Plus the weekend, that's 5 days off. That's amazing. Gwen's gloom vanished and was replaced by pure giddy excitement. 5 days, 5 days of unrestrained freedom. Lin Yi felt his own enthusiasm dim slightly. Spending too much time with these girls had its effects. Still, he was glad. Being cared about was better than being untouchable. The girls' eyes brightened as they imagined the 5-day spree. Raven smirked. I'm the lucky one. I can stay by Jack's side. Sometimes being the demon's daughter isn't so bad, Weiss mused. I don't have to be tied down by school. I wish I could graduate already, Raven sighed. Like those prodigies, PhD at 14? That'd be amazing. Not having to worry about money or life and being able to do whatever you want, Gwen said dreamily. Like Lex Luthor? Weiss teased. Doesn't he do whatever he wants because he's a genius? Becoming bald is out of the question, Gwen replied, rolling her eyes. Seriously, if he's that smart, why hasn't he figured out how to grow his hair back? Maybe he likes being bald, Lin Yi said, laughing. That's possible, Weiss agreed. Rumble, suddenly the private plane shuddered violently. The vibration felt like the world had become unstable. What's going on? Gwen cried. Lin Yi's senses were already reaching out, analyzing, triangulating, but the answer flashed in an instant. Superman. He turned and pointed. Outside the small oval window, Superman was grappling with another figure. Broad, slightly off, their movements aggressive and chaotic. Superman, Weiss gasped. Why is he here? Raven squeezed to the window, peering out. The second figure looked familiar but wrong. Rougher features, a twisted emblem. Lin Yi recognized Bizarro, a flawed clone of Superman. Strong, but not clever. Mean in the wrong ways, yet with a bewildering streak of kindness. Of course, Lin Yi said. Superman could appear anywhere, and brawls between him and Bizarro were messy, but usually resolved by talking or a clear-up of misunderstandings. Still, it was a spectacle. 2 Supermen, someone squealed. The girls were entranced. They didn't know the history of Bizarro or clones. All they saw was a rare live show. They jostled for the window, pressing their faces to the glass as if the closer they were, the more thrilling the fight. Lin Yi smiled and let them watch. Chances for a little privacy were getting rarer. Go, Superman, hit him, Gwen shouted. Right in the jaw, Weiss chimed. Watch out, Raven warned. For a few golden moments, they were just girls playing fans of a superhero. Then everything turned wrong in a single instant. Bizarro lunged and, finding an opening, grabbed Superman by the waist and hucked him like a rag doll straight at the plane. No, one of them screamed. The 3 girls scrambled away from the window as Superman's body smacked through the fuselage with a thunderous crash. A blast of wind and a rain of broken glass and insulation blasted into the cabin, sending loose items and people flying. Lin Yi's stomach dropped as the plane lurched. He scrambled to steady himself. What are you doing, Superman? Lin Yi thought, helpless and furious as he watched the chaos unfold. Is this how you fight? What exactly are you protecting? 63. Being controlled is something the Kao family must appreciate. Bizarro was, in his own way, kind, but his nonsensical way of thinking often made him more trouble than a proper villain, even though he wasn't evil. Right now, he could have bypassed the plane and gone straight for the unconscious Superman, but instead, he insisted on charging head-on, punching the already damaged aircraft in half. Sigh. Lin Yi sighed helplessly. There was nothing he could do. This was a world of superheroes. Moreover, a mixed-up superworld where monsters and bugs could leap out and attack from anywhere. Being an ordinary person here was not easy. "We're going down!" Gwen grabbed Lin Yi as the broken fuselage began to tumble. She clung to him, eyes wide. Lin Yi didn't know why, but his handsome face suddenly registered stunned disbelief. Superman, who had recovered in midair, saw the falling plane and snapped into action. He dodged Bizarro's charge and delivered a brutal backhand punch. Boom! Bizarro flew hundreds of meters away. Superman hadn't gone all out. He knew it wouldn't kill Bizarro, but he used the opening to start rescuing the plane's occupants. "Don't worry, I'll get you to safety." He said it confidently as he neared the broken plane, but then paused, looking a little puzzled at Lin Yi and the others hovering nearby. "We're fine, Superman. Oh, what about the pilot?" Weiss had almost forgotten the diligent pilot still in the cockpit. "Don't worry, he's coming." Raven raised a hand and cast a levitation spell, lifting the stunned pilot out to join the group. The poor man was speechless. His mouth opened as if to say something, then closed again, as if any words would be meaningless. "All right, Clark. Don't worry about us. Go deal with your enemy." Lin Yi, standing on Weiss's levitation array, said to Superman with a mix of helplessness and candor, "What? How did you?" Superman was about to ask how Lin Yi knew his secret identity, but before he could, Bizarro, who had been hurled hundreds of meters, rocketed back into the fight. Clark had to put his question aside and rejoin the brawl. The clash between the righteous Superman and his deranged clone resumed. Weiss, Raven, is keeping us levitating like this going to drain a lot of your energy?" Lin Yi turned to the two girls with concern. "If it were the old me, it would have been exhausting," Weiss said. "But after I absorbed the power of the scroll, this is hardly anything." Raven added, smirking, "I'm fine too. To be honest, not letting you fly earlier was mostly because I didn't want to waste energy." Lin Yi shook his head with a helpless smile. "So, should I go up and help Superman? He could finish the fight quickly, then use his super speed to send us all home." He could, if he wanted, activate the inscription divine power within him and circle the globe hundreds of times. But that power didn't come free. If he triggered it, he'd need the system's repair divine power to suppress it afterward. He didn't want his body to explode from a sudden surge. There were costs to using that dormant divine power, so he kept it parked. Help Superman? I don't think that's necessary. After all, that's Superman. If even Superman can't defeat him, what could we do? Weiss waved a hand. Exactly. But the strange thing about Superman is he can beat almost anyone, yet for reasons like a no-kill rule or some moral line, he never uses his full strength on a foe, Lin Yi said. And then, boom. Before he could finish, Bizarro sent Superman careening down 1,000 meters. See, that's what I mean. He's ridiculously powerful but keeps getting hammered, and I don't understand why. That's precisely why he's a hero, Jack. Gwen interjected, sympathizing with Superman's restraint. You know how much power I can put into one punch as Spider-Woman, right? Uh-huh, Lin Yi nodded. So in theory, if someone's not super weird like the kind Superman fights, I could take them out with a single hit. That's the logic. So superheroes aren't just out to kill everyone they see, Gwen said, smiling. Even if I could finish Rhino with one punch, how could I? I'm a superhero, not a serial killer. Protection, not slaughter. Lin Yi nodded in understanding. I get it, but if you constantly hold back and lose because of that, what happens to the city and the people? Gwen fell silent at that question. Boom. 1,000 meters below, the sounds of destruction were unmistakable. The fight was intensifying. Still need more training, Superman. Can't he find the right touch? That feeling of how much force suppresses and defeats the opponent without killing them, Lin Yi mused, rubbing his chin. That's really hard to get right. Anyone can swing all out, but precisely controlling force? It takes movie-level kung fu masters, Gwen said, thinking aloud. Like Master Oogway. Humph. Lin Yi chuckled and gave a quick instruction. Weiss, move the levitation pad 1/2 meter behind our feet. Weiss looked puzzled, but complied. The next second, Bizarro's punch sent Superman up again, and he landed exactly where the levitation pad had been. If Lin Yi hadn't moved it, they would have been knocked flying like bowling pins. Wow, how did you even predict that? Gwen exclaimed. Humph, talent, Raven said dryly. It was a grim kind of talent, built on experience and data from surviving countless clone battles. Gwen and the others were momentarily speechless. All right, let's get further away. Otherwise, the fallout from their fight will be a real mess, Lin Yi said, and had Weiss move them a few hundred meters so the shockwaves wouldn't hurt them. At worst, it would mess up their hair and clothes. After several rounds, Superman noticed something odd about Bizarro. There was a device at the base of his neck, a brainwave interference unit. Luthor had used it to control Bizarro's mind. The device made everything Bizarro saw appear as grotesque alien creatures. That's why he kept attacking Clark, because in Bizarro's perception, Clark was some kind of alien bug. Mind control was one of those things even Superman had to reckon with. No matter how maxed out his physical and magical resistance were, when someone was being puppeted, there was only so much to be done. In the Superman family, being controlled was a problem everyone had to respect. 64. Superman? One Punch Man? Now that Clark knew what had been controlling Bizarro, it was time to end the farce. His eyes sharpened. He sidestepped Bizarro's punch, spun around, and grabbed him from behind, holding him tight. With Bizarro temporarily restrained, Superman unleashed his heat vision and melted the brainwave control device lodged at the base of Bizarro's neck. Once the device was destroyed, Clark released him. Bizarro, angered, lunged again, then froze when the alien bug before him suddenly resolved into Clark Kent. Huh, where'd that bug go? Bizarro asked, blinking widely, looking left and right as if the alien had simply hidden. It's me, Superman. You've been fighting me the whole time, Clark said, exasperated as he explained. Bizarro's innocent expression showed he didn't understand. Clark continued, patient. You were being controlled by Lex Luthor. He must have secretly put a brainwave device on you when you weren't paying attention, so you saw me as an alien bug. Luthor? Bizarro blinked slowly. Oh, right. When was that? Why don't I remember? He scratched his head in a silly, adorable way. Clark smiled warily. Anyway, you're not under his control anymore. Shouldn't you go home? Ah, right. I forgot to feed the puppy, Bizarro said, grateful. Thanks for reminding me, Superman. I should go. He waved at Clark with a big smile and took off into the sky. Humph, I'll definitely have a good talk with Luthor about this. Watching him disappear, Superman folded his arms. He'd talk to Luthor later, but first there was something else important to handle. He turned and sped toward Lin Yi and his friends. Look, it's Superman. He's handled that mess, Weiss cried, pointing as she hoped to snag an autograph. Who didn't love a powerful, responsible hero? Hey, Superman! The others called. Do you still need our help? Friendly, approachable, Superman was the reliable big brother everyone wanted, everything but alone. Lin Yi and his friends needed a lift. Without Superman's super speed, getting back to New York before dark would be impossible. They accepted his help. Before they left, Lin Yi had one request. Superman, he said, stepping closer, aren't you curious how I know your true identity? Clark blinked. I was about to ask you the same thing. How do you know? Superman maintained his composure. If this had been Batman and someone had blurted out his identity publicly, that someone would be on a very short list. If you want to know, it's simple, Clark replied. Fight me. After the match, I'll tell you the secret. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He had always wanted to measure his own strength against someone capable like Superman. This was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Weiss and the others were stunned. Jack, are you serious? You want to fight Superman? Weiss thought Jack was strong, but not the kind of invincible, limb-losing, revival-crazed fighter who could trade blows with Superman. When Jack fought like that, she always worried he might die. Superman, he usually crushed monsters effortlessly. This was different. Why do you want to challenge me? Superman asked, half amused. He assumed the boy was just full of adolescent bravado. Simple, Lin Yi said. I want to know how strong I really am. You're the perfect measuring stick. Fight me. And besides telling you how I know who you are, I'll tell you a few things about the future. Future, Clark repeated, intrigued. He stroked his chin and finally agreed. All right, kid, I'll accept your challenge, though I doubt it will tell you much. They transported to a wide valley. For some reason, the open space ringed with small hills made Lin Yi think exactly of the place where One Punch Man and Genos trained. He felt a little anxious that he might end up as Genos did, on the receiving end of a serious punch. Still, this was the plan: force Superman to use at least half his strength, or the fight would be meaningless. Lin Yi needed to see how much trouble his skills could cause the Man of Steel. "Okay then, how do you want to do this?" Superman asked, hands on his hips, relaxed and confident. Lin Yi let the Black Sword's demonic power spread outward and settled into his demon form. Leaving aside his inscription divine power, which couldn't be used casually, this demon form was as close to full power as he could go in public. Inside, he calculated, if he could force Superman to use half his strength within a minute, he'd call it a success. Superman's expression changed. "Interesting. Maybe I misjudged you. Are you a demon?" Clark asked, curiosity plain in his voice. "No," Lin Yi replied flatly. "I'm human, a real human." Everyone nearby made the same incredulous faces that screamed, "What are you talking about? Superman, try taking this a little more seriously, or you might actually get scared," Lin Yi said kindly. To Clark, it sounded like provocation. "All right, I suppose this will make me sound arrogant, but I am Superman. Nothing scares me," Clark answered with supreme confidence. Lin Yi's smile vanished. Before the words had even left his mouth, Lin Yi vanished from where he stood and reappeared right in front of Superman. He struck at a weak point, an attack meant to break defenses, and the battle officially began. The speed surprised Clark. He'd assumed this kid didn't have anything like that in him. Worse, he'd never expected to actually feel pain. The hit landed with a crisp smack. Clark's eyes widened. It wasn't much, more like the prick of an ant bite, but it was real. "I did underestimate you, kid," he admitted with a faint smile. Lin Yi's technique was undeniably broken. The man in front of him was an existence that could shrug off the sun's core, yet Lin Yi had managed to breach his defense. Still, Lin Yi knew the limits. Superman's healing was the real problem. The version of Superman on the battlefield wasn't one of those stat-stuffed cannon fodder with no recovery. Bathed in solar energy, any damage he took was restored in seconds. Lin Yi's practical output was a weakness-breaking strike every 1.5 seconds that dealt 2% of total health as true damage. That sounded decent on paper, but Superman could absorb sunlight and recover 10–20% of his health in just a few seconds. Without Rune Divine Power or the Black Sword to steal stats, Lin Yi couldn't possibly grind him down. Clark might be surprised Lin Yi could touch him, but that didn't make the kid a true threat. In Clark's eyes, Lin Yi was still below Batman. Batman actually had methods that could bring him down, even if it meant using kryptonite. But Lin Yi wasn't done. If he couldn't kill Superman, he could at least terrify him. Lin Yi's eyes reddened as he began stacking skills. Demonization cost him. His flesh would be devoured by the Black Sword, but he'd taught himself a cruel shortcut long before he ever held that blade. He'd never given the technique a name, but if he had to call it something now, Sea Tiger mode fit. A last-ditch, self-sacrificing power-up that essentially signed his death warrant. Without a system-level health recovery bug, Sea Tiger mode combined with demonization lasted about a minute before it killed him. 1 minute of no recovery. Only a madman would use it casually. Lin Yi didn't care. Compared to the monsters and demonic entities crawling this superhero world, his base stats were pitiful. If he didn't gamble with his life for massive temporary boosts, he didn't stand a chance. The payoff was intoxicating. He launched into a furious string of combos. With the enhanced strength and speed, he could lift Superman, flip him, bend and twist his limbs, toss him through the air with dizzying martial maneuvers. Weiss and the others watched, mouths agape, as Lin Yi executed what he mocked as the 18 falls of the clinging robe, a flurry of throws and spins meant to disorient as much as damage. The aim was psychological assault as much as physical. For most people, it would have been overwhelming. For someone who lived at supersonic speeds and flew through storms, the routine was only mildly irritating. Lin Yi's assault stung, but didn't fundamentally harm him. This was the horror of facing a real cheat. Lin Yi wondered, half aloud, how Darkseid could have ever put down such a being, or whether he and his allies had simply been fighting the wrong kind of enemy. He kept fighting and kept thinking. The man was not so reckless as he looked. Clark had been tossed and slammed, but he didn't retaliate. Not because he couldn't. because he was worried he'd actually hurt Lin Yi. This sparring match was meaningless. Superman wouldn't go all out against someone who was essentially a civilian. That restraint irked Lin Yi. The invulnerability and calm dismissal made Clark look like he was playing. Fed up with being a human punching bag, Lin Yi hurled Superman high into the air, then charged his best strike, a full-power holy sword assault. He stacked a magic sword conversion, turning physical damage into magic, and aimed for a weak point with the extra punch from Sword Saint mode, a 20% damage bonus. The result was a big hit, a single blow that ate 5% of Superman's total health as massive magic damage. But even that didn't make Clark unleash himself. The Man of Steel absorbed the hit, barely flinched, and still held back. Lin Yi was furious. He dispelled Sea Tiger mode and the demonization stack and let out a relieved laugh. He needed some way to counter regeneration, grievous wounds, something that could stop that relentless solar healing. "Hey, system, do you sell grievous wounds?" he muttered under his breath, half joking. Superman floated there, smiling and patting the place Lin Yi had struck. He still looked as unbothered and noble as ever. "Kid, the strength you showed went far beyond my expectations," he said. "With more training and development, you'd make a fine member of the Justice League." He meant it. The invitation was real. "How about it? Want to keep going?" Clark asked, genuinely pleased. Lin Yi stared. With Clark treating it like a friendly spar and refusing to fight seriously, what was there to prove? He couldn't get him to use his strength, not even half of it. The only effect had been to show Clark that Lin Yi could bite back, but not enough to hurt the man behind the cape. Silence stretched between them. Lin Yi's expression said everything. "You won't take this seriously, no matter what I do." 66. Are you teasing Superman? Forget it. I'd sooner wait for you to turn dark someday. That's more realistic. Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. Expecting a clear-headed Superman to lash out at ordinary people was less likely than expecting him to go dark after a confrontation with the crime syndicate or something similar. What? Clark didn't understand Lin Yi's strange line of thought. "All right, let's skip the fighting," Clark said. "As you said, it's meaningless. How about this? Superman, show me your super strength. Let me see how terrifying your destructive power really is." Lin Yi lowered his demands at last. Reality and expectations didn't always match, and sometimes you had to settle. "How do you want me to do it?" Clark nodded. The request wasn't excessive. "Use that little mountain behind you as a sandbag. Show me whether you have the power to tear through a mountain range." Lin Yi pointed to the lone outcropping rising from the flat valley. It was mostly bare rock, only sparse vegetation around it. "Like this?" Clark rubbed his chin and considered. The mountaintop had no animals, nothing to hurt, and in this flat valley, it looked oddly out of place. "All right," he said, "but this should be your last request, right?" "Of course," Lin Yi replied. "After this, I'll answer any question you have." Clark smiled and floated over to the small mountain under the fascinated eyes of everyone present. He slowly tensed his body and his right fist. The clear look in his eyes hardened into determination, and an energy seemed to surge through him. Lin Yi felt it. Somehow he could sense it. Maybe it was the rune power at work. In his mind, Clark was suddenly a colossal star about to go supernova, 100 times hotter and larger than the sun. That kind of power could destroy everything. Lin Yi wiped sweat from his brow. If Superman ever really went berserk, the planet wouldn't stand a chance. But the potential didn't mean Clark knew how to use it. Still, Clark could easily level a small mountain in his current state. Boom. With a single thunderous punch, the mountain exploded into rock and dust right before their eyes. Weiss and the others were stunned into silence. "Is this really Superman?" Lin Yi breathed out and allowed himself a small smile. He had worried that mastering that absurd rune power so soon after arriving in this world might be too much. Now he no longer thought that. His own leveling speed was fast, but the ceiling of this world remained far beyond him. After billions of reincarnations, failing to save the world didn't feel as pathetic anymore. Yet Lin Yi refused to be weak. If this Superman before him possessed that kind of strength, then the villains who were worse than him were terrifying prospects indeed. Sigh. The road ahead was long. "So, how was it? Satisfied?" Clark asked, turning back with clear eyes. "Yes, I'm satisfied," Lin Yi said, smiling. Thank you, Superman, for indulging my request. Ha, no problem, as long as you keep your part of the bargain. A fair exchange, Clark said. Lin Yi thought of the gentle, kind big brother next door, Superman on the left, the lively, cute little sister Spider-Man on the right. Living in a world like that sounded cozy. You only had to worry about whether some inexplicable disaster would suddenly kill you. All right then, your turn to ask, esteemed Superman. Lin Yi bowed respectfully. Before meeting Clark in person, after seeing countless messy reboots and bad portrayals, Lin Yi had assumed Superman was a brute with no subtlety. But after meeting him, and after sparring a little, Lin Yi understood. Clark was fundamentally kind. He'd always believed that with great power came great responsibility. He had done what he thought was right and made the right choices. He wouldn't fall into darkness. That steadfast goodness, part human, part God, was what made him so precious. As a man, he was the caring big brother who helped everyone. As something more, he was the divine version of the same. Clark said. So, kid, tell me, how do you know my secret identity? Do you have some kind of mind-reading power? Wait, if that's true, you'd already know all my secrets, wouldn't you? Lin Yi teased, including that I like, like who, Lois or Diana? Lin Yi guessed with a curious smile. Clark's eyes widened in surprise, as if Lin Yi had read his mind. Oh boy. Girls, look, our great Mr. Superman is a playboy. Lin Yi laughed and waved at Weiss and the others. Hey, that doesn't really count. Diana and we had an amicable breakup. Clark flushed and rubbed the back of his neck. She's a great woman, strong, amazing, but some habits just didn't mesh with mine. Lin Yi grinned mischievously. So, Clark, besides Lois and Diana, have you ever considered Bruce Wayne as a romantic option? The others squealed. Weiss, Gwen, and Raven whispered excitedly. What? Bruce? Clark hurriedly protested. No. He and I are just friends. The best of friends. Nothing more. But the more he tried to deny it, the more suspicious it sounded. His and my orientations are both normal. Very normal, I think. They all laughed. Sometimes it was fun to tease Superman. He was serious and steadfast, but a little ribbing brought out his human side. 67. Terrible sister complex. All right. Just a little joke. Lin Yi decided that was enough. There was no point in picking on someone so straightforward. Anyway, the reason I know about you is that your story appeared in my original world as a comic. A comic? You mean I'm a character in a comic book? And you're from another world? Clark blinked in disbelief. Yes, exactly. That's how I know everything about you. Lin Yi folded his arms. But because of some very unusual circumstances, I was forced to come to this world, and now I have to live here. A visitor from another world? That's novel, but not that novel. Clark hummed. Counting you, I've probably met at least 10 visitors from other worlds. Most of them weren't as interesting as you, though. Of course, the aliens Superman usually ran into were villains or schemers. Normal folks like Lin Yi were rare. As expected of Superman, so well informed, so that's my mind-reading ability. Oh, and I still owe you a promise. It's about time I told you something important, about the future of this world and such. Both Superman and Weiss straightened up at that. Well, I don't know everything, but at least in the near future there will definitely be an event capable of destroying this whole world, and possibly the entire universe. For specifics, Superman, you should ask Dr. Strange or Dr. Fate. Those two clearly know more. Lin Yi suggested. Dr. Strange and Dr. Fate? All right, when I have time, I'll ask them for details. Superman trusted Lin Yi. If Lin Yi even knew his private affairs, he could probably know larger things too. Very good. If they reveal anything important, would you let me know, Mr. Superman? These events might even require my help. Superman regarded Lin Yi thoughtfully. Lin Yi's strength was impressive. Not enough to threaten him, but enough to handle most villains. He seemed fit for the Justice League, so all right. If I find anything, I'll tell you immediately. Superman agreed. So, do we exchange phone numbers or WeChat? Lin Yi grinned, revealing his real intention. No need. Actually, if I want to, I can pinpoint anyone's location and appear before them the next second. He said it with complete confidence. Man, you really are straightforward, Clark laughed. Do you mean we only want your contact info so you can notify us quickly? Isn't that the idea? Lin Yi laughed. Clark looked genuinely innocent, too honest for his own good. Of course not. You're Superman. Don't you know how many people would love to have your contact info? Hey, don't worry, I won't pester you. I'll only contact you from time to time for a laugh. When Lin Yi explained, Clark understood. Oh, I see. Then all right. Your friendly neighborhood Superman couldn't resist someone as social and easygoing as Lin Yi. Superman's contact information obtained. It was a memorable moment. Lin Yi had effectively entered the big circle of superheroes. From now on, he could go wherever they gathered. He didn't know what good that would do, but maybe Wonder Woman would take them all to Themyscira for a break. After final pleasantries, and after Clark safely returned Lin Yi and the others to New York, he headed back to Metropolis to deal with the usual trivial matters. As for bald boss Lex Luthor, Superman wasn't sure how to handle that particular problem. Back in New York, everyone went about their affairs. Lin Yi and Raven returned to their comfortable time at the villa. Gwen and Weiss, however, had other things to deal with. Gwen had to face her father's interrogation about where she'd been and why she'd been out with that noble girl all weekend. A sudden plunge from bliss to trouble. Gwen wanted, for a heartbeat, to run away with Lin Yi, but she knew she would only regret it later. And Weiss, she told her sister about what had happened in the ruin. Winter was terrified to hear how dangerous it had been. If Weiss had been hurt because of her carelessness, Winter would never forgive herself. She couldn't overlook that as a sister. "Thank goodness you're all right," Winter exclaimed. "This is all thanks to Jack. If it weren't for him, we would never have made it out safely." Weiss smiled, praising her savior. "Is that so?" Winter didn't care about some scrappy boy who appeared out of nowhere. Her eyes were only on her lovely younger sister. "Then maybe I should handle any future ruin explorations. If something happened to you, She was already imagining the grief. Oh sis, you worry too much. With Jack around, nothing will happen to us." "Right. If anything happened, anyone would have to get through Lin Yi first." "Jack again? You trust him that much?" Winter's tone turned guarded. "Yes, sister. You don't know. There aren't many men like Jack left in this world." "Is it that obvious? You don't even try to hide it from me?" Winter's voice grew colder. Weiss didn't see anything wrong with it. "That's right, I really truly like him." That one sentence was basically a death sentence for Lin Yi. Winter would never allow the most important person in the family, her sister, to be taken by some scruffy kid from nowhere. Her expression turned deadly. She felt like she could blow up all of New York to protect Weiss. Achoo! Far away in his luxurious villa, Lin Yi inexplicably sneezed at that exact moment. Didn't expect you to start missing me after being apart so briefly." He said it with a touch of narcissism. 68. I don't like it when people mistake me for someone else. For someone like Winter, finding out who a man really was required a full-scale investigation. She tore open every drawer, pried into every corner of Lin Yi's life. She wanted to know what kind of person this blonde had been to make her sister fall so hard. With just one photo, Winter had dug up everything she could about him. "Lin Yi?" Weiss asked. "See? He's no good. Hiding his real name. What a damn blonde liar." Winter snorted. If Lin Yi had heard that, he would have been baffled. How could he have known that the Chinese name he'd casually picked for himself was actually the true name of his counterpart in this world? The truth was, Lin Yi, who began as a disposable clone with no meaningful identity, had never been given a proper name. The designation Clone 225 would have been more accurate. Over time, he'd accumulated many names. In China, he was Lin Yi. In the US, he was Jack. In Japan, he went by Sakamoto Inishi. In Britain, John William. In Africa, Garka. He legally owned each of those names. Call them fake, and you're not wrong. Call them real, and that's true too. A false existence given false names had somehow become real by sheer repetition. Sometimes Lin Yi had hoped for something rarer than a name, an enlightened master, the kind of reclusive sage you read about in novels who would appear out of nowhere, see through the mundanity of life, and give him a meaningful name that would change everything. That fantasy was why he'd settled in China after so much wandering, always waiting for that cinematic encounter that never came. Instead, after traveling to countless awe-inspiring places and learning that enlightened masters did exist somewhere out there, he found that he himself was simply not the sort of person to be chosen. Meetings with masters usually ended the same way. Want to become a disciple? How much can you pay? 80,000? No? 800,000? Then forget it. So Lin Yi gave up hoping someone would hand him a life by bestowing a name. The journeys themselves became the meaning he'd been seeking. He started believing that every name he gave himself, yes, even Clone 225, was his own true name. He stopped clinging to the identity of a mere clone and embraced Lin Yi, a shut-in, a wanderer, a man who carved out his own path instead of waiting for destiny to hand him one. He lacked protagonist luck, but he wasn't stupid. He knew how to seize opportunities and walk his own road. Call him Lin Yi, call him Jack, call him Sakamoto Enishi or Clone 225, he would turn, smile, and say, "Excuse me, can I help you?" But this Lin Yi wasn't the Lin Yi people in this world had known. He wasn't the same person as the counterpart whose life he'd taken over. That mattered. When Lin Yi first told the girls he was Jack and not Lin Yi, it was a deliberate split, an attempt to stay separate from the man who'd come before him. It didn't take long for him to realize something worse. The body he was using belonged to that counterpart. His own clone body had been blasted apart in the thunderstorm. That man had left him everything, responsibilities, expectations, even a body, and expected Lin Yi to take them on. It was like clocking in with someone else's employee ID and paying someone else's bills. Lin Yi had good reason to resent his predecessor. If he had chosen to occupy even a sliver of the old man's life instead of erasing him, who knows what manipulations and tricks would have followed. An old fox who had been reborn billions of times might seem foolish to some, but his cunning showed in how he set traps and twisted outcomes. Lin Yi couldn't trust that. He'd cut the counterpart out of his life completely. What remained, though, were the leftover complications, loose ends and scars that belonged to someone else but now sat squarely on his shoulders. That was why Winter's little investigation made him uneasy. If she told Weiss the secret she'd dug up, if he was still being called Lin Yi by people who'd known the other man, then the separation he'd fought to preserve would start to blur. Better never to let others claim your identity, because if you let them, you could end up living someone else's life. All the effort you poured into your days would become like sewing a wedding dress for another person, a lifetime of pretense, an empty shell wearing someone else's face. Lin Yi had no desire for that fate. From now on, when people insisted on calling him by the name of the man he replaced, he planned to be blunt. "I am not the Lin Yi you know," he would say. "That Lin Yi was cursed and killed by me, his soul scattered to dust. I'm Lin Yi from another world. So please adjust your attitude. I don't like it when people mistake me for someone else." "So, sister, you're telling me his real name isn't Jack, it's Lin Yi?" "Yes. Yes, I'm pretty sure that smooth-talking fellow lied to you." Really?" Weiss fell silent. If she didn't already know Lin Yi and hadn't gone through so much with him, she might have believed it. "So, do you want me to help drive him off?" Winter's intentions showed through. "Drive him off? No need. I know exactly what kind of person he is." "He's a little odd, but he's a good person," Weiss added. "He's saved me several times." "Saved you several times? That pretty boy who's all talk?" Winter's face registered disbelief. "Yes, if he hadn't thrown himself into danger, we never would have gotten out of that ruin." "Huh, if that's true, then I see." Weiss sighed, knowing Winter couldn't use her methods openly in front of her. "So you still want to keep going on your weekly ruin expeditions? And still with those same companions, including Lin Yi, right?" "Yes, and I'm sure his name is Jack. I really am." Weiss felt oddly vindicated. What Lin Yi had told her seemed right. "Fine, whether he's Jack or Lin Yi, if you trust him so much, I should meet him." "You want to meet Jack in person?" Weiss sounded a little surprised. It was almost unbelievable that her proud sister would insist on meeting someone. "Yes, I need to be sure. If a boy like him has any ill intent toward you, I won't rest until I see for myself." So Winter still didn't understand what Weiss meant. Weiss had assumed she'd made their relationship clear, but her sister could be slow on the uptake. Still, Weiss kept quiet. "All right. If there's a chance, I'll introduce you." There was no rush to explain everything. Seeing for herself would mean more than any words. Winter smiled and stroked Weiss's hair, but her praise felt a little heavy to Weiss. "Get some sleep. You have school tomorrow." "All right, sister." I'll go rest. Weiss nodded and left for her room. Winter watched her go, and a single name lingered in her thoughts: Lin Yi. She couldn't understand why her brilliant sister would fall for such an ordinary guy. Is it just because he's handsome? She muttered. Personally, Winter thought Lin Yi was only average looking. Sigh. Sister complexes, she supposed. She'd have to check him out herself sooner or later. No time like the present, she decided, rising. While Weiss rested, Winter slipped out to the luxurious apartment to see for herself. Achoo, huh? At the same time, Lin Yi sneezed inexplicably. Caught a cold? No way. Maybe from staying in salt water too long? He muttered to himself in the apartment, puzzled. His sixth sense, when it kicked in, could be as absurd as Gwen's spider sense. How else to explain sensing danger from so far away? Jack, do you want me to run out and get some cold medicine? Raven asked, not wanting to sit too close for fear of catching whatever he had. No, probably not. It doesn't feel like a cold. I'm just sneezing for no reason. Is that so? Yeah, that's about it. Raven settled back in his arms and resumed watching the show. The detective drama with Holmes was good. She liked shipping Watson and Holmes together. Lin Yi had no idea a sisterly storm was heading his way. Trouble was coming, and soon he'd have to deal with it. 70, the gap in strength, huge pressure. RWBY. You said once your father regains his strength, you'll have to go back to being poker-faced. That's right. RWBY nodded in Lin Yi's arms. By the way, how long do you think that will take? Judging by the current progress, I'm not completely sure, but maybe about a month. Oh, so if you can learn to control your power in that month, then, Lin Yi's hopeful suggestion made RWBY laugh. I wish I were that lucky. Mastering your power in about a month? Dream on. RWBY continued to make snacks. Don't be so negative. You're a genius. Well, a magical girl-type genius. Are you proud saying that? RWBY's cheeks flushed at his teasing. I'm not in an anime. I'm not a magic girl. Oh, really? But you do have one pastime all magic girls secretly love. Lin Yi grinned and leaned close to her ear in a mock seductive voice. Tentacles. Okay, RWBY did have a thing for those dark, wet tentacles, but honestly, she hadn't done anything too weird with them. Back in the alternate world, she hadn't had the luxury. What magic girl likes tentacles? RWBY was speechless. There are things you don't know, not things you can't imagine. You still understand too little about this world. Lin Yi ruffled her little head. How perverted. RWBY smiled and placed his small hand on her chest. Who's the pervert here? Sometimes Lin Yi found it impossible to keep a straight face around RWBY. He liked to talk big, but RWBY actually followed through, and that was a different league. He worried that if she kept getting bolder, she might someday train him with a steel wool pad. That prospect was honestly terrifying. The air between them thickened with tension and scent. Tonight would probably be another sleepless night. Ding dong. Someone's still ringing the doorbell at this hour? The bell shattered the mood. RWBY, already wired, got irritated. Haha, okay, not so hasty. Lin Yi comforted her with another ruffle, then went to the door and opened it. Good evening, can I help you? Answered. Good evening, excuse me, is this Lin Yi? Lin Yi studied the woman on the doorstep and recognized Weiss's sister almost immediately. Lin Yi, is it? I don't recall telling Weiss, but Lin Yi is one of my names. He had a good idea what this visit was about. The icy beauty in front of him had likely come to test his strength, worried about Weiss. So you already know who I am? Winter looked surprised. Of course, I'm Weiss's sister. I don't know your name. Winter Shui Ni. Since you call Weiss so casually, you can be casual with me too. Her smile was small and cold. Lin Yi could feel the edge beneath it. If it comes to that, Miss Shui Ni, I'll be as candid as you like. Lin Yi was perfectly capable of conversation when he wanted. He just didn't like being constrained in front of people he disliked. You came for a reason, no? Of course. Lin Yi returned her smile, hiding a faintly mischievous twist. I prefer efficiency. It seems you do as well. Winter raised her left hand. A pale, snow-white sigil bloomed beneath their feet. Who is it, Jack? Before either of them could react, the sigil flared, and both Lin Yi and RWBY were teleported to a deserted park not far from the luxury apartments. Teleportation? I didn't expect inscription magic to do that. They looked around at the empty park. Lin Yi let out a low whistle. Inscription is versatile. With enough understanding and skill, it can take you anywhere in this world. Unfortunately, my knowledge of inscription isn't deep enough, Winter admitted. I can only manage short-distance jumps. Lin Yi fell silent for a moment. Are you telling me this because you want to recruit me for inscription research? No. I'm just explaining why you're suddenly here so you don't get confused. Winter flicked her arm with a cold expression and produced a long, slender military saber. So what now? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. You already know why you're here. If you really have the qualifications to protect Weiss on her excursions into the ruins, prove it. Show me that your strength impresses me. As she spoke, Winter completed her array. The saber in her hand flashed with dazzling white light, and horrific inscription beasts began to materialize behind her. The power of inscription was indeed formidable, able to manifest creatures and warlike sigils. Lin Yi found himself intrigued by the idea of a martial soul true body and the possibilities it suggested. Do you accept the challenge? Winter asked, her Ice Queen poise fully on display. Ha! Why does it always have to be like this? RWBY muttered, rolling her eyes. We just finished an adventure and thought we'd finally rest. Then this happens. Why do problems always find us? She complained. She was itching to resume other activities with Lin Yi. Come on, RWBY. It'll be quick. We won't be delayed long. The test, I accept. But my darling RWBY is in a hurry, and I am too. So I apologize in advance if this hurts your pride, Miss Shui Ni. Winter scoffed at his arrogance. She was a respected warrior. Monsters and supervillains had knelt before her. Lin Yi's taunt slid off her like water. Then, in an instant, boom! It all happened so fast, Winter didn't have time to register it. One moment she was poised, the next she was on the ground, knocked down by a single strike from Lin Yi. The blow was precise and just strong enough to defeat her. No more, no less. Lin Yi had done it. A one-hit takedown. Maybe he wasn't perfectly polished against Superman-level foes, but against opponents below that, he was terrifyingly efficient. Don't assume that because Lin Yi frequented high-level games, he could only barely handle lower-ranked threats. Even at the bottom of the ladder, there were experts. He was not someone lesser opponents should underestimate. Hard, squeeze dry. Hard, squeeze dry. Lin Yi ended it instantly. He didn't even need to show off any special power. He simply seized the moment when she was overconfident. Everyone knows the feeling. Something suddenly darts toward you, and because your attention isn't on it, it seems to teleport right in front of you. Once you calm down and focus, you realize it wasn't nearly as fast as it first appeared. Lin Yi took advantage of that exact human reflex. To Winter, he had seemed to blink across the room at the speed of light. But Raven, watching from the side, was stunned. Winter had built momentum. How could she be taken down so swiftly without Jack using any abilities? Her strength must be awful, Raven thought. Even worse than Weiss. Only Winter knew the truth. Weiss looked like a cute little sister beside her now. Unfortunately for Winter, she'd run into Lin Yi. His cheat was simply absurd. Unless you were an extreme stats monster, the moment you squared up with him, the result was already decided. Have I passed the test, Miss Schnee? Lin Yi smiled, a faint, mocking curl at the corner of his mouth. In that instant, Winter understood she was facing something inhuman. As an accomplished warrior, she recognized the nuance in Lin Yi's move, the reaction time, the precision of force. He'd barely hurt her, and yet she couldn't break free. The helplessness was maddening, like a bug trapped in someone's hand, utterly powerless despite not feeling a single strong blow. How could a teenager have such control? Who are you? Winter demanded, wariness spiking. Me? Call me Jack if you like. Lin Yi's my name too. Technically in China I go by Lin Yi, but I'm not the Lin Yi you found in your files. Because that Lin Yi is already dead. Winter's confusion turned to something darker. Lin Yi's casual explanation only made him seem more monstrous. She bristled. Explain. Lin Yi sighed, holding back his irritation. It was better to clear things up now than let them fester. He went over the origin again, how she'd been summoned from another world because the Lin Yi of this world had failed to avert a catastrophe, so they pulled her counterpart from elsewhere. Back in the suite, Winter picked up the black tea Lin Yi had poured and summarized slowly. Yes, that's my background. You understand now, and you've tested my strength. So, have I passed your assessment? Lin Yi wanted to say, "Can I leave now?" instead of answering. Winter sipped her tea, composed. Raven and Lin Yi were both caught off guard by the restraint. Then Winter added, "I know there's no way to be sure you're telling the truth. You could be lying." Raven and Lin Yi exchanged amused glances. Believe it or not, they didn't care. "You burst into someone's suite in the middle of the night, made a mess of things, kept us awake, and after we've put up with all this, you start picking fights?" Raven snapped, red-faced. "Is there something wrong with you?" she added, fury building. Jack might humor her, but Raven wouldn't stand for it. Winter had never expected to be called out like that. "How dare you? How dare you?" Raven shot back. "Trespassing. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police." Lin Yi blinked. "Trespassing? My sister gave you that suite." Winter flared. "Exactly. We traded 3 insanely expensive gems for it." Raven stared. Winter was speechless, unable to come up with a retort. "So you're trespassing now?" Winter demanded, furious. "I don't care if you're Weiss's sister. Being Weiss's sister doesn't give you the right to barge in and disrupt her life," Raven said. "Being Weiss's sister doesn't mean you can just trespass and cause trouble." "What? Is Weiss God and you God's sister now?" Winter sputtered. Winter was on the back foot. Raven kept pressing. "If you have any sense of decency, then leave, right now. Leave our room." Winter slammed the teacup on the table, stood, turned, and stomped out without looking back. Lin Yi watched, dumbfounded. Raven had just exploded and chased off a proud Schnee heiress. He could hardly believe his eyes. "Wow," Lin Yi muttered. "RWBY, that was incredible," he added, looking at Raven with genuine admiration. Raven had expected him to think she'd been over the top. Instead, he was thrilled. "It was perfect," she said, grinning. "I never dared be that blunt with her before. She's Weiss's sister. Still, I did what I wanted to say." "You did what I always wanted to do," Lin Yi admitted, hugging her with sudden enthusiasm. Raven blushed at the affection but reveled in it. "From now on, you handle the people I can't insult, and I'll cover the ones you can't." "Sounds fair," Lin Yi said after a beat, "though I can't think of anyone I'd need you to insult." "With your father, doesn't he count?" Raven prompted. Lin Yi chuckled. "All right, he does count, but if I wanted to curse him, I'd do it myself." "Fine, then we'll curse him together." They both laughed. Raven's eyes shone with mischief. "Speaking of, you owe me a reward for helping you so much." "Right, I'll reward you by not letting you sleep tonight," Lin Yi said playfully. "Humph, not enough." 2 nights, no 3, Raven countered, waggling fingers in a suggestive count. There were some things in that apartment that did not need explaining. Raven had been awake for almost 3 days and still looked invigorated, ready to go again. Any ordinary man who ended up with someone like her would be in for a rough time. She would exhaust him utterly. Outside, Winter seethed. She couldn't believe she, the Schnee heiress, had been humiliated, defeated so quickly, and then verbally shredded by a gothic nobody. Rage flared hot and fierce inside her. Jack, Lin Yi, whatever name he used, she didn't care. The face she'd lost today would be reclaimed 100-fold. Wait and see. And with that, the seed of trouble was quietly sown. 72. Bitch Angel is coming. What is a superhero? By the name, someone who has strengths ordinary people don't, and who still feels they haven't suffered enough, who thinks they can take on even greater trials. In a way, Lin Yi could be called a superhero, but because he was fortunate enough to be financially independent, he and Raven had an easier time of it than Gwen. "Ha! I'm so jealous of you two. No school, no work. All you have to do is this. When you're bored, you go for a stroll, then come back and intense action." Gwen's complaint was half jealous, half exasperated. Early in the morning, the day had already ground her down. It was her father again. The night before, he'd lectured her for hours, and she'd been up at 5 or 6 as usual to check the streets for trouble. Gwen was exhausted, but being a superhero didn't come with quitting as an option, so she kept going. Lin Yi and Raven, on the other hand, hadn't slept at all. They'd gone out because they were hungry, and there was nothing in the room. As fate would have it, they ran into Gwen on patrol, and since they already met, they sat together on the roof of a building to eat and talk. "RWBY, you must have some magic to swap souls, right?" Gwen teased. "Could you use it on me?" Raven replied with a smile. Gwen really was like that, full of drama. Lin Yi and Raven could feel the pressure on her shoulders. "If you're that desperate, come live with us," Raven said. I'd love to, but I can't abandon my real life, Gwen answered, sitting beside Lin Yi and watching him and Raven slurp their breakfast. Man, at this hour, only hardworking Chinese people would have a shop open, Lin Yi grumbled between bites. Gwen blinked at the remark. Try some, he offered. I don't have much of an appetite, Gwen said, but Lin Yi insisted. Just one bite. Unable to refuse, she lifted her mask and let him feed her. This is actually good, she said, approving. Didn't I tell you? Lin Yi smiled, then went a little reflective. Life's like this bowl of noodles. It takes careful cooking and the right seasoning to make it taste good. You have to go through tough steps and deal with hard ingredients. If you tackle them patiently, little by little, the result will be rich and worth it. Gwen laughed. You sound like one of those kung fu masters preaching about life. I aim to be a master, Lin Yi said lightly. His words seemed to ease something in Gwen. She looked at him and asked softly, Jack, back when you were a clone, how did you keep going? How did you become who you are now? Lin Yi's expression darkened. It's embarrassing to say. At first, I didn't have perseverance. I was lucky. I didn't die. When I found out my memories were fake, that I was alive only to be used, I wanted to end it. I wanted to die. Death felt like the happiest thing. I wanted to end the meaningless life, but I couldn't. Even dying was a luxury for something that was someone else's property, a consumable while useful. So I didn't survive by sheer will. I survived because I was lucky and because I was strong enough. He stopped, the tiredness in his face obvious. Gwen and Raven were quiet for a moment, then softened. I'm grateful now, Lin Yi continued. Grateful that luck and some strength let me be here today, to see the beauty of life and to meet you both. That was enough. Gwen and Raven relaxed and laughed. Don't give up because of a rough patch, Lin Yi said. Keep moving forward and you'll find your own garden. Thanks, Jack, Gwen said, actually encouraged. Now I'm even more looking forward to the 5-day weekend. Phew, so I have to work harder before then, or I won't enjoy it, she added, brimming with renewed energy. Gwen stood, cheered up and ready to patrol again. See you on the long weekend, she said, waving as she shot away with her webs into the dawn. You've got the air of a master now, Raven said admiringly. Of course, I'm a genius, Lin Yi pretended, then fell into a more serious mood when Raven asked, At first you really didn't want to keep going? At first I didn't, Lin Yi admitted. Something or someone changed that. His face tightened. That's a story I'm not ready to tell. Sorry, Raven. Even remembering it wears me out. Raven nodded. That's fine. You don't have to say anything now. Tell me when you're ready. I'll wait. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you, Raven, he murmured. The sun rose. It was going to be an extraordinary day, because somewhere else in the city, trouble was brewing. Damn it, I came all the way to New York and haven't even seen a trace of that evil spirit. A beautiful blonde woman snapped, pacing while glaring at the man behind her. Frizzy-haired priest, are you sure he really came here? The man in black robes stood with a halo of frizzy hair and a grim expression. According to the clues, he is definitely hiding somewhere in New York. Both of you need to pay full attention. This evil spirit is not like the ones you fought before, the priest continued. It was created by the fallen angel Azazel. Its danger far exceeds all the spirits you've dealt with combined. For this mission, both of you must be prepared to die. If you fail, this whole country could be doomed. The blonde scoffed and muttered about paying for mistakes made above. Why do we have to bear the consequences for those idiots? Shut up, the priest snapped. Are you planning never to return to heaven? Ah, can you please lower your voice? You're so annoying, the blonde retorted, unrestrained as ever. The two fallen angels bickered like rivals, but the warning hung heavy in the air. Something made by Azazel had come to New York, and it wasn't something to face lightly. Chapter 73, Being entangled by a bitch is not a good thing. Boom. Just as he finished speaking, an explosion went off somewhere in New York for reasons unknown. Has it started already? The frizzy-haired priest's face tightened at the sound. Is it there? Stod-chan, let's go. Got it. Two angels who didn't look remotely angelic rushed toward the blast. Hey, be extremely careful. Like I said, this is nothing like your usual trouble. We know. The priest sighed. He kept warning them, but the two seemed not to take it seriously. He could only murmur a prayer to the goddess of luck, And the prayer mattered this time, because besides those two angels, Lin Yi and Raven were already heading toward the scene. With Lin Yi involved, surprises were rare. "What a peaceful New York City," he drawled. "Gwen should be off to school by now, so I guess we'll handle this." Lin Yi and Raven reached the site before the two angels. A regular man had been possessed and turned into a monster. The man, probably an ordinary husband having the worst week of his life, had become a hulking, demonic figure, swinging mutated, jet-black claws and smashing everything. "Ha! Destroy it! Work, life, and the wife who slept with the boss! Destroy it all, damn it! Ha!" He was an easy target, resentment and darkness compressed in his heart, a perfect foothold for an evil spirit. Lin Yi looked him over and decided the man was beyond saving. "I'll protect the bystanders. The monster's yours," he told Raven. Raven reacted instantly after they split tasks. "Humph. Fine. I'll see if he still has any consciousness left." Lin Yi stepped forward and engaged the possessed man. If it wasn't a top-tier enemy, Lin Yi preferred not to trigger his demonic transformation. A little help from the black sword sufficed. Since the divine battle in the ruins, the black sword had evolved again, still digesting the inscription avatar's power, but capable of stranger things. It could transform itself. Any weapon, vehicle, even creature, if Lin Yi wished, the sword could become it. Today he chose his favorite, a long staff. Compared to a sword, a staff offered more tricks. Black staff mode, on. Lin Yi spun the staff, blocking the monster's indiscriminate attacks. "Bro, your wife ran off with your boss. Why not go deal with that boss instead of hurting innocent people?" he asked between parries. "You don't get it. It's the world's fault. This world is trash. That's why my wife left me for that beast of a boss," the man ranted. "So you'll destroy the whole damned world? That'll fix everything?" Lin Yi muttered. "Yes. If the world is destroyed, all suffering ends. Ha ha ha!" Lin Yi tried another angle. "Maybe it's not the world that's trash. Maybe you are? You've got all that power now and you know your wife cheated. Why not take revenge on her or on those scumbags?" Lin Yi goaded. He was more provoker than therapist. "You don't understand. She did it for me," the man shouted. Lin Yi stared. Of course he'd be possessed. Who wouldn't be a magnet for weird things with thinking like that? There was no persuading him. Even if purified, he'd still be a worthless cuckold in Lin Yi's eyes. Instead of wasting effort to save him, Lin Yi decided to end it. He struck with heavy blows, no restraint. The staff whistled. His movements were sharp and fluid, tripping and subduing the demon. Lin Yi's martial skill shone. He'd always been better with a staff than a sword. The monster staggered, black blood flowing, body numbed and dazed, nearly beaten to death. Lin Yi straightened, the staff raised. "Sigh, I was going to save you, but fine. If you hate this world so much, I'll kindly send you away." "Stop right there!" A shout came from the side. Lin Yi turned and saw a blonde girl and a gothic girl dash in, snatching the kill from under his staff with blinding speed. Gunshots cracked and blades flashed. The monster shattered into fragments and then detonated into paradise gold coins. But Lin Yi noticed a strange black speck trying to condense and slither away, right under his nose. Impossible. A flick of his staff. Snap. He smashed the black dot before it could flee. Sizzle. The attempt to carry the negative energy back to its main body failed. "Damn it," someone cursed. Far beneath the city, in a sewer, a well-hidden humanoid evil spirit raged in impotent fury. "That damned human! How did he find my clone? Shit! Damn it! All that work for nothing. If only I'd collected a trace more negative energy, if only I could have spread it, I'd have devoured everyone in the city." The spirit roared, hysterical. Why? Damned humans. And those two bitch angels. Just wait. One day I'll tear you all to shreds. This human world, no, this universe will be mine." Mad laughter echoed through the dark, foul-smelling sewer. Back at ground level, Pandy, one of the bitchy angels, sneered. "What was that? That frizzy-haired priest made it sound so serious. That's all?" "Well, at least a lot of gold coins dropped," Stadchan replied. Lin Yi was speechless. He hadn't even realized those two nuisances were on this world. Disgusted, he tried to slip away before Pandy could notice and entangle him, but he was a beat too slow. "Hey, fresh meat, what kind of angel are you? I've never seen you before. Good heavens." Pandy actually mistook Lin Yi for one of her own. 74. Sour bitch angel. Sorry, I'm human. Lin Yi offered an awkward smile and tried to slip away. A few steps later, Pandi caught his arm. Why are you in such a hurry? You can't just let a gem like this walk off. I'm not letting him go that easily. Come on, cutie. Let big sister show you something really nice. She leaned in, all too forward. Lin Yi used a practiced disengagement and shrugged her off. If you can't control your urges, go to a brothel. Don't go grabbing whoever you please. Pandi pouted. Oh, don't be like that. Even if you're not an angel, I still like your type. She flipped her hair and spread her charm. Look at me. My face, my figure. She even started making a show of herself. Lin Yi's smile went colder. You're attractive, sure, and I'm sure most guys wouldn't be able to control themselves when they see you, but I don't like sluts. That set her off. What? So high and mighty, you probably haven't even slept with anyone, virgin boy. You don't know what you're missing. Pandi sulked like someone biting into sour grapes. Whatever. Can you two stop trailing me? I'm going to get dessert with Raven. Dessert? Lin Yi cursed under his breath. He'd almost forgotten Shi Duojin, seated beside Pandi, was obsessed with sweets. Damn. Now this would only get worse. Where? I want to come too, I do. Hey, since you're both virgins, why don't you give your first time to big sister? Pandi cooed. It'll be gentle, very comfortable. Come on. Desserts. Shi Duojin chimed, eyes gleaming. Lin Yi could only stare. Out of sheer bad luck, strange romantic encounters kept appearing in his path. Being good-looking really wasn't always a blessing. Anyway, Pandi and Shi Duojin insisted, so they followed Lin Yi and Raven to the desert place Weiss had recommended. This place is pretty classy, Pandi sighed, eyeing Lin Yi. And look at your wallet. Didn't expect it. You're even richer than you look. Humph, you're totally my type. She rested her chin on her hands, suddenly infatuated, even though Lin Yi hadn't done anything to warrant it. Raven watched, unimpressed. Who are these people, Jack? She asked, baffled. She couldn't figure why Lin Yi kept running into random girls. Lin Yi shrugged. They just came up to us on the street. Then, to get it over with, Pandi introduced herself. I'm Pandi, an angel from heaven. Shi Duojin, an angel, she says. Pandi crowed. And I'm Gatter Beto, the man at her side cut in, a priest acting on heaven's orders. Just call me Gatter. Lin Yi felt Gator's gaze like a spotlight. The priest went on, solemn and a little theatrical. We came to New York to deal with an evil spirit that fled here. That evil spirit is terrifying, born from the fallen angel Azazel. It has the power to destroy the world. He straightened. We traveled from the fallen city to stop it. Raven rolled her eyes. So why are you bothering us? Pandi swooned over Lin Yi. It's because of our little cutie Jack. His face is too unfair. Raven stepped forward and put herself between Lin Yi and Pandi, brushing Pandi's hand away. He has a girlfriend. Back off. Pandi's face fell. He's taken? What a pity. You had a golden opportunity, and you're throwing it away. She pouted, both jealous and offended. Rah, you don't even know what you're missing. Someone who slept with me always says how amazing it was. But your taste, only gothic lolies? That's pathetic. You'll be stuck with awkward, boring sex your whole life. The insults poured out until she was practically foaming. Then she flopped back into her seat and sulkily began scooping ice cream into her mouth. I'm sorry. Don't take it personally. She's just a hopeless, slutty angel. Trash, except for her looks. Gator cleared his throat and scolded Pandi on Lin Yi's behalf, but Lin Yi waved it off. He didn't want anyone doing him favors. He wasn't sure what that priest was thinking, staring at him like that. Look, I get why you're here. We've already helped you out. We even paid for your desserts. So can you please go home now? We've all got our own lives. Lin Yi tried to put the matter to rest. He hated dealing with them. This was exhausting. Gator's expression turned serious. No, the trouble isn't over. Everyone froze. What you just exorcised was only an ordinary person, possessed and turned into another spirit by that evil. He met Lin Yi's eyes. The true divine-made evil spirit is still at large. It's hiding somewhere in New York, biding its time. Lin Yi's brow tightened. That meant these two weren't leaving New York anytime soon. He'd have to keep running into them. The thought made his chest ache. So your mission continues in New York? Gator nodded. Exactly. We can't return to the fallen city yet. Raven folded her arms. Fine, it's your business. It's not ours. For now, let's just stay out of each other's way. Lin Yi offered a tight smile and stood to leave with Raven. Shi, eyeing their unfinished desserts, suddenly brightened. Aren't you going to eat those? No, you can have them, Lin Yi said. In that case, Shi pounced on the plates and finished their desserts in a few quick bites. Pandi suddenly called after them, Are you sure you won't reconsider? Lin Yi barked a laugh that was mostly irritation. No, I'm not interested. Don't ask again. Or I'll accuse you of sexual harassment, he added, deadpan. Without another word, Lin Yi and Raven left the shop. Pandi watched them go, sighing dramatically. Such a shame. He's a gem, completely unattainable. Shi frowned at Pandi, puzzled. What's wrong? She glared back. I just don't understand what's so great about gothic lolis. Shi shrugged, and Pandi went back to sulking into her ice cream. Why are there always so many beautiful girls around you? Raven sighed, helplessly, as she nudged her good friend Lin Yi. Because I'm a handsome guy, Lin Yi replied with a grin. Ugh, I wish you weren't so handsome. Just a little bit ordinary would be fine. Ordinary? Like the way I looked when I was all disheveled before? Right. Since I can't make your face ugly, at least I can make you less eye-catching with hair and makeup. Raven reached out and ruffled his hair. There, see? Problem solved. Lin Yi laughed. You really think messing up my hair will work? Well, it's better than doing nothing. That's true. Lin Yi straightened. So, where to now? Back home to binge shows, or do you have another plan? They both stood there, idly debating. How about I help you learn to control your power? Lin Yi suggested suddenly. You want to teach me to control mine, but you don't even know magic. I may not know it, but Dr. Strange does. And since we've got some time, why not go to him and learn? I might as well try a few things myself. Maybe I'll be gifted too. Lin Yi began making hand gestures, mimicking a magic inscription. Raven snorted. Magic isn't that easy. It takes an insane memory and deep comprehension. Most important, can you tolerate the boredom of studying it? As long as you're with me, nothing's tedious. Lin Yi said it so casually, Raven felt her face warm. Lovers knew the line. They still reacted every time. All right then, let's try. Do you even know where Dr. Strange is? Of course. Lin Yi's photographic memory came in handy. 177A Bleecker Street. It's in the comics and the movies, used as the Sanctum Sanctorum's address. So you learned about us from comics and movies? Raven stood at the Sanctum's imposing entrance, half incredulous. I never lie, Lin Yi said with a smile. You lied to Gwen before, said your name was Ezio. Ezio could be my real name, Lin Yi shrugged. If I go to Florence and introduce myself as Ezio, who's to say it isn't real? People might wonder if I belong to Assassin's Creed, though. Raven blinked. So you have a lot of names and they're all real? You could say that. I'm a clone. No one named me, so there's nothing wrong with me choosing my own names. If I gave you a name, would you accept it as yours? As long as I acknowledge it, it's mine. Okay, got it. Raven smiled, finally understanding his odd logic. They stepped inside the sanctum, but after wandering through the grand rooms, they couldn't find any sign of Dr. Strange. The front door stood open. Hello, Dr. Strange? Are you in? Raven called. I don't think he's here, Lin Yi said after a moment. But why would he leave the door open? Didn't you feel the magic? Raven said. There's a barrier here. It keeps people with ill intent away. So thieves wouldn't even notice an open door, Lin Yi murmured. So Dr. Strange expected us. Exactly. Then why did he leave if he wasn't here? Lin Yi frowned. A voice echoed through the sanctum. Because I'm at the Monster Hotel, Dr. Strange said. Lin Yi's jaw dropped. What? I knew you'd come to learn magic, so I opened the door to let you in, Strange continued. There are plenty of books here. Books are humanity's best teachers. You don't necessarily need me to instruct you. Right. Lin Yi accepted it. Where are you now exactly? Monster Hotel, Strange answered. Monster Hotel? Lin Yi's curiosity was piqued. What's that? It's a new hotel the Schnee family opened with the vampire clan, specifically for monsters. There's a hotel for monsters? Why didn't Weiss tell me? Lin Yi asked. She has school. Not everyone is an unemployed drifter like you. Lin Yi fell silent. Unemployed drifter? Maybe I am that now. What are you doing there? Raven asked Strange. Do you have monster friends? I'm researching a vampire inscription there, Strange replied. I like an inscription I found, and I'm studying it. Ah! Lin Yi nodded. So, have you made any progress? You were investigating an inscription yourself, Strange said. You found something big. You already know? Lin Yi's brows knit. This man knew a lot. The second Miss Schnee has already acquired that power, Strange said matter-of-factly. How could I not know? That never happened before, Lin Yi said slowly. Seems fate has shifted, Strange replied. And it's because of you. Lin Yi's eyes widened. You really think I caused that? Child, Strange said, tone gentle but firm. If I tell you what I know about the future, it will change. You must discover those answers yourself. Classic Strange. Lin Yi sighed. Fine, we'll read your books while we're here. Do as you like. Just remember to clean up what needs cleaning before you leave. Lin Yi's expression froze. Raven's eyes went wide. The line sounded suggestive. What do you think? Lin Yi glanced at Raven, who was positively bristling with question marks. He busted out laughing, thinking, you aren't actually considering doing that in his house, are you? This magic book covers all the basic principles of spellcasting. If you really want to learn, start with this one. Raven handed Lin Yi the stack of magic books she'd collected. By quick count, there were at least 30 volumes. Whoa, so many. I don't know if my tiny brain can hold all that. Humph. Raven couldn't help smiling at his cheeky tone. I believe in you. After all, you're a genius. Heh, what about you? What did you find? For me, I was lucky. I happened to come across a manual on controlling demonic power from another dimension. Raven produced another pile of books from behind her. Just happened, huh? Lin Yi grinned. Well, maybe Doctor left it out for me to find. Raven nodded and flipped through the manual in her hand. No maybe about it. He did. Lin Yi shrugged. How did he know I'd need all these anyway? Raven scratched her head. Easy, the time stone. He has the time stone. It can restore things to their original state, yes, but it can also let you see the future and the past. No wonder. I didn't expect him to possess something like that. Exactly. That's why he can be considered among the strongest magic users. Not just powerful spells, he's got a stack of treasures. Raven's eyes darkened slightly as realization settled over her. No wonder you said there are many beings in this world who could rival my father. The world really wasn't simple. Raven suddenly understood that her father's threats were minor in the grand scheme. The true dangers lay with other, far more formidable entities. From what the angels had said earlier, a God-created evil spirit could obliterate the world, and if gods themselves decided to get involved, anything could happen. This realm was in constant peril. A single misstep could be catastrophic. That thought made Raven resolve not to stay helpless. If Lin Yi kept risking his life to slay gods while she just watched, she would forever be a liability. It was time to change. So in the quiet of the magic library, Raven and Lin Yi, each understanding what the other felt, sat down to study with seriousness. Let them grow like that for a while. Now time to check on the Monster Hotel. Mavis, the charming vampire heiress, had scarcely slept a day since she learned her father had agreed to let her go to New York to open a new hotel. Wow, I can finally see the outside world on my own. I haven't been out alone in over 100 years. No, my dear. I can't let you go alone. The outside world is too dangerous. You might get hurt the next second. So you'll come with me? Mavis's glee evaporated when Dracula, her father, ruined her mood. Father, if you come with me, what about the hotel here? It's fine. Frank and Uncle Murray can manage it. I've already arranged everything. Dracula waved toward Frankenstein and the chubby mummy standing nearby, both smiling and waving cheerfully. Don't worry, we've got it covered. The sight didn't reassure Mavis. Are you sure? Yes, absolutely. Dracula couldn't hide his true motive. He didn't want his precious daughter out of his sight. He was doting to the point of smothering. The Schnee family had set up a teleportation array. It took only seconds to go from the U.S. to Transylvania, so Dracula could come and go whenever he wanted. Though Mavis's business dealings were run out of Britain, the vampires actually lived in Transylvania. Mavis just happened to travel for the family company. But father, when we get to New York, can I have some time to wander by myself? Mavis asked, firm despite her protesting tone. This was her bottom-line request. No, you don't understand. The most dangerous thing is being on the street alone. You might run into those terrifying humans. Believe me, they can be far more frightening than you imagine. On that point, Dracula had some truth. Still, Mavis scowled like a pouting kitten. Even if it's just a stroll, You must come with me. Dracula looked uncomfortable. I just feel a bit uneasy. Mavis bristled. She hated feeling treated like a child. Oh, Father, you're being ridiculous. Come on, there's nothing to be afraid of. Follow me. Nothing will harm you. An invisible pressure settled on Mavis's shoulders. What looked like her father's comforting hand felt like a mountain. Before they could argue further, a voice announced, Mr. Dracula, Miss Mavis, the teleportation device is ready. Do you require anything else? It was Winter Schnee who greeted them. We've already prepared your luggage. It's right here. You can have it transported. Dracula pointed to a pile of luggage almost the size of a small mountain. It seemed as if they didn't plan to return from New York. Winter, calm and collected, waved her hand, and an inscription array shimmered into being. The luggage floated and was quickly transported to the teleportation gate. Thanks to Dr. Strange, we were able to develop the long-distance teleportation inscription array, Winter said modestly. Without him, it would have been difficult. Dracula smiled. It seems your control over inscription magic has reached a new level. Winter's social poise and competence were unmistakable. She was truly worthy of being the Schnee family's eldest daughter, experienced and composed after many ups and downs. Enough pleasantries, she said. Shall we go see the new hotel? I want to make sure your friends have a proper place to stay. Please, Dracula said hastily, take us to the teleportation array. Winter led the vampire pair to the array in the hotel. With a blinding flash of white light, they arrived in New York, at the Monster Hotel. So welcome to New York, Winter announced, graceful as ever. Would you like to start by touring the hotel's exquisite layout, or would you prefer to experience the bustling city first? I can arrange different viewing experiences depending on your preference. Mavis's eyes sparkled at the choice. Wow, this is perfect. Winter's polished hospitality pleased both father and daughter. Let's first see the hotel layout, Dracula said. Of course, please follow me. And with that, Winter began to show the father and daughter around, guiding them carefully through the Monster Hotel and helping them get familiar with their new base in the city. Monster Inn? Pandy stared up at the luxurious hotel before her, hands clasped behind her head. Who names a place like that? The priest leading them smiled. It's a residence for monsters. Monsters? Pandy echoed, even more bewildered. Aren't monsters supposed to be killed? Why would there be a hotel just for them? You're being too black and white, the priest said. Not every creature in this world is evil. Many, like ordinary people, are just trying to live here and make the best of it. If it weren't for a recommendation from a monster friend, we probably wouldn't have anywhere to stay, he added as he stepped up to the desk. Following the formalities, he showed their IDs and the card his monster friend had given him, checking them into the newly opened luxury Monster Inn. Upstairs, Mephistopheles was scanning the place when his gaze briefly met Pandy's. Pandy squinted across the lobby. That girl, could she be a vampire? A real vampire, the priest said, surprised. I didn't expect them to actually exist. Shi Duojin couldn't resist teasing. As an angel, you'd be surprised by vampires? Honestly, Pandy. Besides, it's a pity she's not exactly a stunner. I wonder if there are any handsome monster boys here. Pandy's mind, which liked to wander into less virtuous territories, immediately went to work. What do you mean, no prime secret meat? You promised a perfect place for monsters, a place without prime secret meat. How is that perfect? Her voice rose until she was practically squealing. At the front desk, a tentacled monster, disguised as a human, exploded in fury when the cat-eared receptionist calmly replied, I'm sorry, sir. We're currently out of stock. When will you restock? The tentacle creature demanded, slamming its fist on the counter. About a month, the receptionist stammered. A month? I'll go insane in a month, the monster roared, its true form breaking through the guys as it went berserk, uprooting chairs and demolishing the lobby. Tch! Trouble wherever you go, even at a hotel, Pandy muttered, already stepping forward to intervene. Before she could do anything, Dracula materialized in front of the rampaging tentacled beast. With a single bone-chilling snap, he delivered a slap, boom, knocking the creature cold. The force from the blow was so strong it nearly lifted Pandy's skirt. She had to admit there were always stronger people around than her. This ancient vampire's power was unmistakable. Someone, Turn him back into a human and throw him out, Dracula commanded in that low, oppressive voice that made everyone fall silent. With Dracula on guard, the inn had no shortage of authority. No monster would cause trouble while he was around. All right, I'm going out to find some guys, Pan D said, bored now that the excitement had been quelled. She wandered off to enjoy herself while the others dealt with their own matters. Back at school, Weiss was in class, but like always, she wasn't completely focused. She had already finished the coursework for the semester weeks ago, and probably the stuff taught in college and grad school too. So doodling her favorite boy, Lin Yi, in the margins of her notebook was hardly a career-limiting move. Still, today something different happened. Ahem. Though this is sudden, please welcome our new transfer student, the teacher said. Hi everyone, I'm RWBY. I love fighting games. Nice to meet you all, said a new girl, slipping into the classroom. She wore gothic clothes and had short, rose-colored hair. Transferring in so late in the term raised a few eyebrows. Was she here for grades? For a better university path? But Weiss had no idea what the real reason was. RWBY sat beside Weiss, doing her best to act casual. Hey! Oh, hey! Weiss replied, hurriedly covering the Lin Yi sketch with her arm. RWBY couldn't help glancing at the hidden drawing. What are you doing? Nothing. Just drawing, Weiss said, voice betraying her. RWBY, sensing an opening, pressed on. Is that a celebrity? Weiss flushed. No. So it's someone you like, RWBY said with a knowing smile. Weiss's face went scarlet. No, it's not. RWBY let that be. She wasn't about to bluntly expose Weiss's secret. Knowing was enough. She beamed like a cheerful squirrel who'd found a precious acorn. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. Weiss, flustered, decided arguing would only make it worse. She fell silent. By the way, what's your name? RWBY asked, as if the two confiding in each other made them instant friends. Weiss Shui Ni, Weiss said softly. I'm Ruby Ross, the new girl replied, smiling and offering her hand. Weiss hesitated a moment but accepted the gesture. So, are we friends now? RWBY asked eagerly. Yes, I guess so, Weiss said, a little awkwardly, but with a small smile blooming as she let someone in. 78. The big one is coming. RWBY clung to Weiss like glue. Wherever Weiss went, eating, using the bathroom, doing homework, RWBY followed. She made little observations about whatever Weiss was doing, offering comments that came from her limited understanding and boundless curiosity. Weiss found it bewildering. She could appreciate that a transfer student would be nervous, especially so late in the semester, but following her everywhere was excessive. Humph, can you stop shadowing me like this? Weiss snapped, turning on her heel. RWBY, still talking about her hobbies and daily life, blinked. Huh? But aren't we friends? I thought friends stuck together. I know you're worried about fitting in and that moving late in the term is awkward, Weiss sighed. But this clinginess is a bit much. Can we keep a reasonable distance, like normal friends? RWBY's face fell as realization washed over her. She'd overstepped. She nodded awkwardly, shuffled a few steps back, and allowed the space Weiss demanded. Good, Weiss said, satisfied, and returned to her campus tasks. RWBY watched her retreating back as she headed to class, feeling adrift. Humph. I really messed up, she muttered, letting out a small, rueful sigh. By the time classes let out, RWBY had followed Weiss as far as she could without being obtrusive. She wanted to ask about inscription power. She'd been dying to, but Weiss's rebuke stayed her tongue. If she'd been more direct, would Weiss have suspected ulterior motives? Would she have become guarded or hostile? RWBY couldn't decide and ended up blaming herself for the missed chance. She met up with her older sister, Yang Xiaolong, by the motorcycle as Yang leaned against it with her usual confident air. Hey, how's it going? Settling in okay? Yang asked. It's not bad, RWBY replied guardedly. Yang cocked an eyebrow. You don't sound thrilled. I figured you'd be happier at a place like this. RWBY shook her head. The school's great, but I think I botched Uncle's mission. Yang shrugged. Is it that bad? It's not like you can't fix it. For now, enjoy the school. The mission can wait. There'll be other chances. You think it'll be easy to deal with her? RWBY asked suddenly. Weiss? She's not a problem. Pretty, brilliant, from a noble family, trained like us. She's definitely a capable fighter, RWBY said, growing more serious. That's what worries me. Yang's expression matched hers now. I heard about the inscription ruin. Dad said it was the hardest to breach. only two ways to get the inscription power from there. You either defeat the inscription avatar, the so-called god of glyphs, or you find a living descendant whose bloodline has survived. Both are supposed to be impossible. And yet it was breached, RWBY finished. So which method did they use? If there's still a surviving descendant, that's one thing, Yang said. But if someone beat the god of glyphs... She let the thought trail off. Both sisters fell silent for a moment. If someone defeated the god of glyphs and has ill intent, RWBY said quietly, who in this world, or even the whole universe, could stop them? Yang shook her head. It's hard to believe. If someone could defeat that avatar, why go through such lengths to obtain inscription power? It doesn't make sense. Unless inscription power has some function or strength we don't know about, RWBY added. That's exactly what Uncle and Dad fear, Yang said. A threat stronger than the god of glyphs itself. She crossed her arms and smiled a little, a dangerous sparkle of anticipation in her eyes. It's going to get interesting. Once the rest of the inscription family's here, they'll come swarming. This place will be crowded. In fact, when Lin Yi had defeated the god of glyphs in that ruin, the ripple was felt across the entire inscription clan network. Major inscription families and houses immediately dispatched agents to where the inscription power was now concentrated. The signature of that power, now attached to Weiss, acted like a beacon. Unless she learned to control and conceal it, more and more strangers would be drawn to her. That wasn't just a problem for Weiss. Lin Yi, who had been the one to breach the ruin, also had to be wary. Who could guarantee those converging on Weiss were not villains bent on seizing the power? Many dangers were quietly converging. Reading in the library, Lin Yi suddenly felt every hair on his arms rise. A cold twinge of danger prickled at the edge of his awareness. The sensation pointed toward Weiss and Raven. He was unsure how to verify it, so he turned instinctively toward Raven, who had been meditating nearby. The sight confirmed his dread. Raven's face was ashen. She floated in a meditation that was going horribly wrong. A dark, intense aura was building around her, raw magic coiling and churning like a storm about to break. No way, Lin Yi thought, alarmed. Has she lost control of her magic? Having read so much basic magic theory, Lin Yi knew this was serious. Raven wasn't just struggling, she was on the verge of being consumed by her own power. That it happened so quickly stunned him. Raven was a prodigy, the daughter of Trigon, a genius. People like her didn't normally fall into this kind of crisis. But that thought didn't matter now. The only thing that did was getting her out of it. Luckily, Lin Yi had learned how to handle this kind of emergency. He rose and moved behind Raven without hesitation. He activated a magical seal with both hands and, following a method he'd studied, began to redirect his own mana into her. The technique would allow his will and consciousness to enter Raven's spiritual world and help resolve the imbalance from within. He knew where the method came from. Dr. Strange had shown him the future in which Raven went mad with magic and had told him how to respond. Lin Yi felt a flash of gratitude for that curly-haired sorcerer. There was no time to wonder about the whys and hows. There was only action. Fingers steady, he poured his magic into the conduit he'd created, stepping over the threshold into Raven's inner realm as her storm of power surged. Inside her spiritual world, he would have to confront whatever was twisting the magic, steady her will, and calm the torrent before it overwhelmed her. The danger had come at them suddenly, but Lin Yi was ready to meet it head-on. Lin Yi had learned the techniques from the books. Using them, he slipped into Raven's chaotic mental world. The scene that greeted him was a ruined city on the verge of collapse. Gwen lay unconscious. Weiss was badly injured, and the version of Lin Yi inside Raven's mind was being driven to the brink of death by a demonized Raven. Raven herself, consumed with guilt and utterly powerless to stop what she'd done. She watched the destruction she'd wrought and fell into despair, hating that she was a monster and believing she could never control that damned power. Watching that, Lin Yi felt helpless and heartbroken. How could Raven think her power was so small that it could only torture him to death? Did she really not see how much stronger he was? And yet, as a self-proclaimed prodigy, he couldn't help feeling a prick of competitiveness. He smiled, shook his head, and stepped closer to the demonized Raven, who radiated a terrifying aura. He found her face buried in her hands. sobbing. Gently, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The touch made Raven start and turn. Jack, but you weren't already. Raven looked at him in disbelief. Almost tormented me to death? Humph, Rui, how can you not believe in my strength? You know I'm a genius, youth, Lin Yi said in his usual breezy, cocky tone. That carefree demeanor was exactly what told Raven that the person before her was her Jack. Her tense shoulders softened. She reached out and clung to him, letting all her emotions pour out. I thought I hurt you. I hurt Gwen, Weiss. Was I such a monster? Should I not exist? Was my birth a mistake? Jack, would the world be better off if I just disappeared? Lin Yi held her, stroked her hair, and listened. When her cries finally subsided and her breathing steadied, he spoke softly, answering the hollowed-out questions. Maybe to some people you look like a disaster, a demon, a scourge. Maybe everyone thinks you're an evil thing. But I know you, Raven. I know you're kinder and more diligent and stronger than anyone I've ever met. No matter what others say, even if you begin to doubt yourself, I will always believe in you, love you, and be by your side. You are my world and everything to me. No one else's opinion can change that. Raven stared at him, stunned. So you won't leave, even if the whole world turns against me? You'll stay until I reclaim everything, even 500 years from now. The tears that came this time were different, tears of relief and happiness. As she calmed, the demonization receded. The Raven Lin Yi knew returned, whole and unchanged. 500 years. As long as you're by my side, the world doesn't matter, she murmured, hugging him tighter. But if you don't learn to control your power, I might not even live to be 500. Right, Lin Yi grinned. After all, humans need a little magic to live a long time. They spent the rest of the mental space with Lin Yi by her side, helping Raven stabilize her emotions and teaching her to control the demonic power inside her. With him holding her steady, Raven's progress was rapid. She focused all her energy without the weight of doubt and worry dragging her down. To both their surprise, she discovered she could already manage power on a city-destroying scale. She wouldn't have to be the helpless one standing on the sidelines anymore. Well, things are going well, Lin Yi said, watching Raven hold vast energy without losing control. You truly are a genius, magic girl. Raven's eyes softened. It's because of you. I couldn't have done it without you. They smiled at each other. We both deserve the credit. Genius magic girl and genius youth mentor. We're indispensable to each other. Raven laughed and patted him downplayingly. In her eyes, Lin Yi was the best thing in the world. He felt a little embarrassed at how adoring she was. Her affection level was full, and what was the point of boasting more? On the other hand, he thought wryly, too much devotion might become dangerous. If Raven ever went yandere, he truly would have his hands full. As Raven gazed at him, oblivious to the world, she didn't notice that something extraordinary was happening. The demonic power inside her was changing, guided by her subconscious and by the love she felt. The transformation unfolded subtly. By the time Lin Yi realized Raven's pupils had taken on purple heart shapes, it was already well underway. In the mental world, he at first took it for a symbolic manifestation of her love. When the training seemed complete, they left the mental world and returned to reality, only to find the changes had followed them back. Rui, why are your eyes still purple? Lin Yi blurted. Raven rushed to a mirror and stared. Her eyes were still that soft purple, and then she noticed something even stranger. A purple pattern was pulsing on her lower abdomen, shining and flickering in time with her emotions and magic. Holy shit, what the hell is this? Raven whispered, baffled and a little alarmed. She had never seen anything like it. Her expression shifted toward Lin Yi, part astonishment, part suspicion. Damn curly hair, how much do you actually know? Lin Yi scratched his head helplessly. All he could think was that the time stone was ridiculously overpowered and disturbingly weird. Really, not a drop left. Hey, Jack, you said earlier we could do it here. You remember? The Raven's expression was seductive but restrained, and Lin Yi found her a little amusing. He grinned and shook his head. Yeah, I did say that, but I honestly thought you were joking. Her face fell. The Raven chastised herself inwardly. How could she have such thoughts? Was she really the sort of person who'd lose herself like this and only think about sex with Jack? No, this had to be the fault of that blasted magic inscription. It had never been there before. Did it really grow out of her? She felt both excited and ashamed. Part of her wanted to blame Jack for stirring it up, but he'd only been trying to help. If anyone was to blame, it was her own perverse body. She was so lost in self-reproach, she hadn't heard a word he said. "Raven?" Lin Yi said after a moment, more seriously now. It wasn't that he feared she'd destroy the world. He was worried about whether he could survive living under her current condition. He certainly didn't want to spend every day in bed. He tried to pin down exactly what she was dealing with. "So let me be clear, you're having trouble controlling sexual urges, yes?" "Yeah, pretty much." She could barely say it aloud. "Do you only want me, or is it a general inability to suppress those urges?" he asked. She thought about it, then managed, I only want you. If I don't think about you, the urge fades." That was an important discovery. It meant whatever the inscription had done, it was linked to him specifically, less chaotic than an indiscriminate hunger. That gave Lin Yi an idea, but it posed a dilemma. If she only needed him, could he keep her from always thinking of him? Probably not. Another option, give her what she wanted until she was satisfied, which would be inconvenient. If he was honest, he could survive a while, but could the world afford to let him vanish for a month? He didn't know what other problems might crop up while he was indisposed. Raven twisted on the spot, trying to keep control. "Jack, I really can't hold back." Lin Yi was pragmatic. If she lost it here, she might do something reckless. "All right, open the portal. Let's go home so you can safely get relief." She didn't hesitate. In the blink of an eye, they were back on that familiar bed. The Raven began to taste him with a focused urgency. This was going to be a long experiment. Lin Yi needed to know what exactly she was drawing on to calm down. Did she need magic, others' life force, sleep? If he didn't figure that out, this could be lethal. He was a top genius in combat, but sex-based supernatural effects weren't in his resume. Fate had a sense of humor. He'd left the newbie village and immediately run into a final boss. 2 hours later, the Raven sat up, flushed and blissful. She sighed and declared those moments the happiest, most beautiful in her life. Nobody else could have given her such an experience except Lin Yi. She felt like she'd found paradise. Lin Yi, by contrast, was pale and sweating, wearing a forced smile. He was utterly exhausted. He had almost nothing left. But the experience had been instructive. The Raven did absorb and release unusual energies, but not in the simple succubus sense of draining life to feed herself. She was converting magic and inscription power, both from herself and from the surroundings, into raw life force, and then injecting that life force back into partners. In short, sex with her could massively boost someone's vitality. The problem was the magnitude. She could flood a body with life force. A proper dose was restorative, too much was dangerous. If his body were a cup, she'd been pouring like a waterfall. Left unchecked, the surplus would overwhelm and destabilize him. Fortunately, Lin Yi reacted in time. He turned the incoming flood to his advantage, using the rush of life force to patch the deficits in his own body, rechanneling and consolidating the energy, layer by layer, until he formed a stable barrier against the overdose. If he hadn't, he might well have died in such a delightful way, but his instinct for survival was stronger than the momentary pleasure. He couldn't help but take pride in his quick thinking. Who else could have seen the incoming threat and fought fire with fire, used the life tide to build their defenses? It had been risky, but it worked. He felt relief wash over him as he began to recover. Just as he let himself believe it was over, the Raven looked at him with hopeful, eager eyes. "Jack, can we do it again?" Lin Yi's expression fell. Of course, every boss had a ridiculous second phase. He sighed inwardly and braced himself.